A crisp autumn morning, my daughter's laughter, the squeak of a swing set, it was our perfect Saturday ritual. But a single question from a stranger, backed by a badge, quickly spiraled our peaceful park day into every black father's worst nightmare. The squeak of the swing set was the soundtrack to my perfect Saturday. It was one of those early autumn mornings where the sun is bright, but the air has a crisp, cool edge. My daughter Lily, who is 6 years old and the undisputed center of my universe, was pumping her little legs, trying to touch the sky with the toes of her sparkly sneakers. Her laughter was like wind chimes, and I was sitting on a nearby bench, sipping a lukewarm coffee from a thermos, just soaking it all in. This was our ritual. Every Saturday, just me and my Lilybug at the park. No work emails, no phone calls, just the two of us. I'm a big guy, 6'3", broad-shouldered, and yes, I'm black. Lily, on the other hand, is a tiny, energetic firecracker with my eyes, but with skin several shades lighter than mine, a gift from her mother, my late wife, who was white. Lily's hair is a wild storm of brown curls that she refuses to let me tame. To me, she's the most beautiful thing in the world, a perfect blend of the woman I loved and me. To some people, apparently, we're a puzzle that needs solving. I first noticed the woman staring from across the playground. She was sitting on a bench with a poodle in her lap, pretending to be reading a magazine, but her eyes kept flicking up over the top, zeroing in on us. She had the classic "I need to speak to the manager" haircut and a sour, pinched expression as if she'd just bitten into a lemon. I'd seen her type a million times before. I tried to ignore her, focusing on Lily's shouts of "Higher, Daddy, higher!" But I could feel her gaze like a physical weight. It was the kind of stare that isn't just curious, it's accusatory. After about 10 minutes, she finally stood up, placed her poodle on the ground, and started walking towards us. My whole body tensed. I've had this conversation before, in grocery stores, at the mall, even at a parent-teacher conference. It's a weary, familiar dance. "Excuse me," she said, her voice sharp and loud enough to cut through the playground noise. Lily stopped pumping her legs, the swing slowly gliding to a halt. I gave her a polite, tired smile. "Can I help you?" She looked from me to Lily, then back to me. Her eyes narrowed. "Is everything all right here?" "Everything's perfect," I said, my voice steady. "Just a dad and his daughter enjoying the morning." I intentionally emphasized the word dad. She wasn't buying it. Really, she seems a little distressed. I looked at Lily, who was now staring at the woman with wide, confused eyes. A second ago, she'd been the happiest kid in the world. Now, a cloud of unease was drifting over her. It made my blood boil, but I kept my cool. For Lily. Always for Lily. "She's fine," I said, my smile becoming a little more strained. "We were just having fun, weren't we, Lilybug?" Lily nodded silently, clutching the chains of the swing. The woman took a step closer. "I don't know," she said, her voice dripping with insinuation. "You just don't seem like, she gestured vaguely between me and my daughter. My patience, which was already worn thin from a long week at work, was about to snap. "A match? Ma'am, this is my daughter. We're here every Saturday. I'd appreciate it if you'd just let us enjoy our time together." She took a step back, her hand flying to her chest in mock offense. "Well, there's no need to get aggressive. I'm just a concerned citizen." And with that, she pulled out her phone. My stomach dropped. I knew exactly what was coming next. She turned her back to me, but I could hear her talking in a loud, frantic whisper. "Yes, operator, there's a very large, aggressive man with a little girl who doesn't look like him at all. I'm worried for her safety." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her what a miserable, prejudiced person she was. But I couldn't, not with Lily watching. Instead, I unhooked her from the swing. "Come on, sweetie," I said, my voice softer than I felt. "Let's go play on the slide." Lily took my hand, her little finger squeezing mine tightly. She knew something was wrong. Kids always know. We were at the top of the slide when the patrol car rolled up, its lights off, but its presence as subtle as a thunderstorm. A single officer got out. He was young, with a military-style haircut and a cocky swagger. He had that look of a guy who was probably a bully in high school and just swapped his Letterman jacket for a uniform. He sauntered over to the woman, who pointed a trembling finger in my direction, putting on a grand performance of a terrified victim. The officer, Miller, according to his name tag, didn't even glance my way at first. He listened to her story, nodding seriously. Then he turned to me, his hand resting casually on his hip, inches from his sidearm. He approached us slowly, his eyes scanning me up and down, a smirk playing on his lips. "All right, buddy," he said, stopping a few feet away. "What's going on here? Lady says you're bothering her." "I'm not bothering anyone, officer," I said calmly, placing a reassuring hand on Lily's shoulder. He looked down at Lily, who hid behind my leg. Then he looked back at me, and he chuckled. It wasn't a friendly laugh. It was a demeaning, condescending sound that made the hairs on my arm stand up. "Right, your daughter. That's a good one." My jaw tightened. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," he said, his smirk widening. "So why don't you tell me what you're really doing here? Casing the place? Waiting for moms to leave their purses unattended?" I was stunned into silence for a second. The sheer, blatant prejudice of it hit me like a physical blow. "I'm playing with my daughter on a slide," I said, my voice dangerously low. He laughed again, louder this time. "Sure you are, and I'm the King of England. Look, let's cut the crap. I've got better things to do than deal with you. Just admit you were up to no good, and I'll let you walk out of here without a fuss." This was my nightmare, the one every black father has. Being seen as a threat, a predator, especially when you're with your own child. All the composure I was fighting to maintain was starting to crumble. "She is my daughter," I repeated, trying to keep my voice from shaking with rage. "Her name is Lily. She's 6 years old. Her favorite color is glittery pink, and she loves dinosaur chicken nuggets. Is there anything else you need to know?" Officer Miller's face hardened. The smirk was gone, replaced by a cold glare. "Yeah, actually, I need to see some ID and some proof that you're actually this kid's father. A birth certificate would be great." "A birth certificate? Who carries their kid's birth certificate to the playground?" I exclaimed, incredulous. "Someone who has nothing to hide," he shot back. "ID, now." My mind was racing. I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. I knew I didn't legally have to show him ID. But I also knew how this could go. I could refuse, he could claim I was obstructing, and suddenly I'm in handcuffs in front of my little girl. The trauma of that would scar her forever. My pride wasn't worth her pain. Defeated, I sighed. Fine, it's in my wallet. I told Lily to stay put and slowly reached for my back pocket. Miller's hand moved closer to his weapon, his eyes tracking my every move. As my fingers touched the worn leather of my wallet, I heard the sound of a car door shutting firmly. A sleek black car had pulled up to the curb, the kind with tinted windows that city officials use. A man in a sharp, tailored suit was getting out. He was older, with a distinguished gray at his temples, and he moved with an air of effortless authority. Officer Miller glanced over, clearly annoyed by the interruption. The man in the suit didn't even look at the police car. His eyes scanned the playground, and then they locked on to us. A warm, brilliant smile spread across his face, and he started walking towards us with a determined stride. He walked right past Officer Miller as if he were invisible. He stopped right in front of us, his gaze fixed not on me, but on the little girl hiding behind my leg. "Lilybug," the man boomed, his voice full of pure, unadulterated joy. "Did you save some sand for Grandpa?" Lily's face, which had been pinched with fear, broke into a relieved smile. "Grandpa!" she squealed, letting go of my leg and running to him. He scooped her up effortlessly into a big hug, burying his face in her curly hair. My father-in-law, Mayor Thompson, looked over Lily's shoulder at me, his warm smile instantly replaced by a look of deep concern. He saw the tension in my shoulders, the police officer standing too close, the nosy woman hovering nearby. Officer Miller looked completely baffled. He took a half step forward, trying to reassert his authority. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step back. This is an active investigation." The mayor didn't even look at him. His eyes were locked on mine. "David, son, are you okay?" he asked, his voice low and serious. The word son hung in the air. For me, it was a term of endearment I cherished since the day I married his daughter. For Officer Miller, it was a bomb that had just detonated his entire world. His jaw went slack. The smug confidence drained from his face, replaced by a pasty, sickly pallor. His eyes darted from me to the mayor holding my daughter, and the gears in his head seemed to be grinding, screeching, as they struggled to process the new reality. "Son?" he stammered, his voice cracking. "Wait a minute. You're Mayor Thompson." The mayor finally turned his gaze on Miller. The warmth was gone, replaced by a glacial cold that could freeze fire. He adjusted Lily on his hip so she was facing away from the officer, shielding her. "I am," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. Miller started to sweat. Beads of it popped up on his forehead. Miller took a half step forward, trying to reassert his authority. "Sir, with all due respect, I'm going to have to ask you to step back. This is an active investigation." The mayor shifted his gaze to her. The woman flinched as if he'd physically struck her. She took a step back, clutching her poodle's leash. I was just worried," she whimpered. They didn't look like they belonged together." "Belonged," the mayor repeated, the words dripping with contempt. He looked at me, then at Lily, whose skin was a beautiful cafe au latte to my dark chocolate, then back at the woman. "What you mean is my son-in-law is black and my granddaughter is mixed race, and your small, prejudiced mind couldn't comprehend the concept of a loving father who doesn't look exactly like his child." The woman's face turned bright red. She opened her mouth to protest, but no words came out. The mayor turned his attention back to Miller, who looked like he was about to be physically ill. "Sir, with all due respect, I was following procedure," mumbled, his eyes fixed on the ground. "Procedure?" The mayor's voice rose, a rare crack in his calm facade. "Is it procedure to laugh in a citizen's face? Is it procedure to accuse a father of being a criminal in front of his child? Is it procedure to demand a man carry his child's birth certificate to a playground? Tell me, Officer Miller, is that the kind of city we're running? The kind of police department I'm supposed to be proud of?" Every word was a hammer blow. Miller was shrinking before our very eyes, the high and mighty cop now just a scared kid in a uniform that suddenly looked too big for him. "No, sir. Mr. Mayor, sir, I apologize. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake," he pleaded. I hadn't said a word. I was just standing there, watching the power dynamic flip so violently it was giving me whiplash. The rage that had been coiling in my gut was still there, but now it was joined by a profound, bone-deep weariness. This was my father-in-law, a man I loved and respected, a man who happened to be the mayor. But he shouldn't have to be the mayor for me to be treated like a human being, like a father. He looked at me, and I saw the same thought mirrored in his eyes. This was about more than just one bad cop. He put Lily down gently. "Lilybug, you see that black car over there? That's my driver, Frank. Go tell him Grandpa needs some of those fruit snacks he keeps in the glove box for you." Lily, sensing the tension was over, beamed and scampered off toward the car. The mayor waited until she was out of earshot.
Then he took a step towards Officer Miller, who flinched again. "Give me your badge number," the mayor said. It wasn't a request. Miller fumbled for a pen in a small notebook, his hand shaking so badly he could barely write. He tore off the slip of paper and handed it over. "You're on desk duty, effective immediately," the mayor commanded. "Report to your precinct commander and tell him to expect a call from me and from the chief of police. Do you understand me?" "Yes, sir," Miller whispered, his voice hoarse. "Now get out of my sight." Miller practically ran back to his patrol car, not even bothering to speak to the woman who had started this whole mess. He got in and sped away without so much as a backward glance. The playground was suddenly quiet, save for the distant sound of traffic. The mayor turned to the woman, who was trying to subtly inch her way towards the park exit. "As for you," he said, his voice flat and hard, "filing a false police report is a crime. Wasting city resources is a serious offense. But you know what's worse? Teaching a child, my grandchild, that the world is a place where she should be afraid of her own father's love. I'm going to remember your face, and you can be sure that the next time you decide to be a concerned citizen, we will be taking a very, very close look at your motivations." She stared at him, horrified, then grabbed her poodle and scurried away without a word. Finally, it was just us, the two of us, standing in the quiet of the morning. My father-in-law put a heavy hand on my shoulder. "David," he said, his voice filled with a sorrowful anger, "I am so sorry you had to go through that Lily had to see that." "It's not your fault, Robert," I said, finally finding my voice. "It is," he insisted, his jaw tight. "It's my city, my police department. This rot, it's my job to cut it out, and that's exactly what we're going to do." He looked me dead in the eye, and I saw the kind, gentle grandfather replaced by the powerful, resolute mayor. "Let's get Lily home. Then you and I are going straight to the chief's office. I want you to look him in the eye and tell him everything that happened here today." He paused, his expression hardening into something I'd never seen before. "But before we do that, there's one thing I need you to check on your phone. Pull up the body cam footage laws for this city. I have a sinking feeling that when we ask for Officer Miller's recording of this little investigation, we're going to be told it doesn't exist." The drive to police headquarters felt surreal. Lily was in the back of the mayor's clown car, happily munching on fruit snacks and chattering away to Frank, the driver, completely oblivious to the storm that had just passed. Robert sat beside me in the passenger seat, silent and radiating a controlled fury. I had my phone out just as he'd asked, and my blood ran cold as I read the city ordinance. Body cameras were mandatory for all patrol officers, but there was a loophole you could drive a truck through. An officer could deactivate their camera during what they deemed a non-confrontational public interaction. It was a subjective clause, designed to give cops an out, and I knew with a sickening certainty that Miller had used it. "He turned it off," I said, my voice flat. "Or he'll claim he did. He'll say our conversation was non-confrontational right up until you arrived." Robert slammed his fist softly on the leather dashboard. "Of course. A loophole left in by the police union during the last negotiation. I fought them on it, but I compromised. I never should have." He turned to me, his eyes blazing. "They think they're untouchable, David. They think they can hide behind their badges and their union reps. Today, they're going to learn otherwise." Walking into the police chief's office with the mayor was like parting the Red Sea. Officers and administrative staff who would normally never give me a second glance snapped to attention, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Whispers followed us down the hall. They all knew something big was happening. Police Chief Reynolds was a man I'd met a few times at city functions. He was a portly, balding man who always seemed more like a politician than a cop, quick with a handshake and a hollow smile. Today, that smile was nowhere to be seen. He stood when we entered, his face a mask of strained professionalism. "Mr. Mayor," he said, nodding respectfully. "David, to what do I owe the pleasure?" Cut the crap, Mike, Robert said, not even bothering to sit down. He stood in the center of the office, dominating the space. We're here because one of your officers, a badge number 724, Officer Miller, just racially profiled and harassed my son-in-law in front of my granddaughter. Reynolds' face paled. He gestured for us to sit. Please, Robert, let's not be hasty. I'm sure there's been some kind of misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding, I said, speaking up for the first time, my voice shaking with a rage I could no longer contain, is that Officer Miller seems to think his badge gives him the right to treat a black man like a criminal for the crime of playing with his own child. He laughed at me, Chief. He accused me of being a thief. He demanded I produce a birth certificate on a playground. I recounted the entire humiliating ordeal, every condescending word, every dismissive gesture. Robert stood by the window with his arms crossed, letting me speak, his presence a silent, powerful endorsement of every word I said. When I finished, the silence in the room was heavy and suffocating. Chief Reynolds cleared his throat. This is deeply disturbing. I assure you we will launch a full and immediate internal affairs investigation. We're beyond that, Mike, Robert said, turning from the window. I want Miller's body cam footage, now.
The chief shifted uncomfortably in his expensive leather chair. Of course, I'll put in the request right away. As you know, there's a process. There is no process today, Robert interrupted, his voice like steel. The process is you pick up that phone, you call your IT department, and you tell them to pull the footage from Officer Miller's camera from between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. this morning and put it on this screen. Am I clear? Sweating now, the chief picked up his phone and mumbled the order. We waited. The minutes stretched into an eternity. I could hear my own heart pounding in my ears. I knew what was coming, but I needed them to see it. I needed the lie to be laid bare. Finally, an email pinged on the chief's computer. He clicked it open, his expression grim. Well, he said with a sigh, it appears there was a malfunction. A malfunction, I repeated, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. That's right, Reynolds said, refusing to meet my eyes. Officer Miller's camera was apparently not recording during the time of the incident. He filed a report about it just a few minutes ago. Says he noticed it was on the fritz at the end of his shift this morning. How convenient, Robert said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. A man who has been on the force for 5 years suddenly has a camera malfunction at the exact moment he's racially profiling a citizen. What do you take me for, Mike? A fool? Robert, my hands are tied, the chief said, his voice pleading now. Without the footage, it's the officer's word against David's. Miller will claim he was polite and professional. That woman who called 911 will back him up. Internal Affairs will find it inconclusive. So that's it? I exploded, standing up. He gets away with it? He just gets to go on terrorizing people because he knows how to game the system? Because he can press a button and erase his own misconduct? Robert put a calming hand on my shoulder. No, David, that's not it. He turned back to the chief, a strange, calculating look in his eyes. Mike, you and I both know that precinct has had a history of complaints, more than any other in the city. Miller, in particular, I'm willing to bet this isn't his first rodeo. The chief's face was unreadable. We investigate every complaint thoroughly. Do you, Robert pressed? Or do you just file them away in a cabinet to protect your own? I want you to pull Officer Miller's entire complaint history, every single one. And I want the same for every officer at his precinct for the past 5 years. Reynolds looked aghast. Robert, that's an incredible amount of data. It would be a logistical nightmare, and the union would fight it tooth and nail. Let them, the mayor said coolly. Because if you don't give me that data, I will go to the press this afternoon. I will tell them the entire story of what happened to my family today. I will tell them about the conveniently malfunctioning body camera. And then I will announce a full, independent, top-to-bottom audit of your department. Your career, Mike, will be over. So, you have a choice.
You can cooperate with me now and we can clean up your house together. Or you can stonewall me and I will burn the whole house down with you inside it. The threat hung in the air, thick and undeniable. Chief Reynolds looked like he had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. He swallowed hard, picked up his phone, and with a trembling hand, he made the call. For the next hour, we sat in that office as a mountain of digital files were transferred to the chief's computer. He pulled them up on the large monitor on his wall. It was a sea of case numbers, dates, and dispositions. Most of them ended with the same word: unfounded, inconclusive, exonerated. There, Robert said, pointing to the screen, start with Miller. The chief clicked on the file. A list of 16 complaints appeared, dating back 4 years. 16. Excessive force, illegal search, verbal abuse, racial profiling. Every single one had been dismissed. 16, Mike? Robert asked, his voice a low growl. And this man is still on my streets, carrying a gun? Before the chief could answer, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but something made me look. The message was short and cryptic. I saw what happened at the park. The cop is lying. I have a video, but you have to be careful. He's not who you think he is. My breath caught in my throat. I looked up at the screen filled with Miller's dismissed complaints and then back down at the text. A video. Someone had filmed it all. But the last part of the message sent a chill down my spine. He's not who you think he is. What could that possibly mean? Just then, the chief's assistant knocked and entered the office, her face pale. "Chief," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a call for you. It's Officer Miller's wife." The chief frowned. "I'm in a meeting. Take a message." "Sir," the assistant insisted, her eyes wide with fear. "She's hysterical. She's screaming that Officer Miller just came home and that he's tearing their house apart. She said he's shouting that the mayor's son-in-law ruined him and that he's going to make him pay." The air in the room instantly became a vacuum. Every bit of oxygen was sucked out by the assistant's words. The bureaucratic battle over files and footage evaporated, replaced by the raw, immediate threat of violence. Chief Reynolds' face turned ashen. He snatched the phone from his assistant. "Miller's address, now. Send 2 units, lights and sirens. Tell them domestic dispute, officer involved, possibly armed and unstable. Go." Robert was already on his own phone, his voice a low, urgent command. "Frank, lock the car doors. Do not let Lily out of your sight. Get her away from headquarters. Take her to the residence, now." He hung up and looked at me, his expression a grim mixture of fury and fear. "He knows who you are, David. He knows where you live." My blood turned to ice. My first thought was Lily, but she was safe with Frank, heading to the mayor's official residence, a place with its own security. My next thought was the anonymous text, the video, and the cryptic warning, "He's not who you think he is." It suddenly felt less like a puzzle and more like a key. "Chief," I said, my voice sharp, cutting through the rising panic, "while your men are on their way, I need you to do something else. Run a new name through your system, not Miller. Run the name Thompson." Reynolds and Robert both stared at me, confused. "David, what are you talking about?" Robert asked. "Just do it," I insisted, showing them the text message on my phone. "The person who sent this says they have a video. They're trying to warn me about something more than just a bad cop." Skeptical but seeing the urgency in my eyes, Reynolds typed the name into the law enforcement database. He narrowed the search parameters. We waited, the silence punctuated only by the frantic clicking of the keyboard and the distant wail of sirens growing louder outside. Then a file popped up. It wasn't a cop's file. It was a juvenile record, sealed but accessible to the chief. He read the screen, and the color drained completely from his face. He looked up, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Oh my God," he whispered. "Robert, you're not going to believe this."
He turned the monitor towards us. There on the screen was a grainy, decade-old mugshot of a sneering teenager with the same cold eyes as Officer Miller. The name on the file was Daniel Thompson, and listed under known relatives was a single name, Michael Reynolds, his son. The chief of police sank into his chair, looking utterly defeated. "His mother and I divorced when he was a boy," he said, his voice a hollow rasp. "She remarried a man named Miller. Daniel, he was always a troubled kid, angry. He took his stepfather's name when he joined the force. I pulled strings to get him in. I thought the uniform, the discipline, I thought it would straighten him out." The whole ugly picture snapped into focus. Miller, or Daniel Thompson, wasn't just a bad cop protected by the system. He was the chief's son, protected by his own father. The 16 dismissed complaints, the conveniently malfunctioning body cam, the immediate desk duty instead of suspension. It was all nepotism, a father covering for his corrupt, violent son. The woman at the park hadn't just called a random cop. She had likely called the precinct and asked for him specifically, knowing he was the chief's son and would handle things with a certain impunity. Miller's rage wasn't just about being reprimanded. It was the fury of a spoiled child finally facing a consequence he couldn't dodge. A consequence delivered by the one family in the city more powerful than his own. Just then, my phone buzzed again. It was a video file from the same anonymous number. I hit play. It was shaky phone footage filmed from behind a large oak tree at the playground, but the audio was crystal clear. It captured everything. Miller's condescending laugh, his accusation that I was a thief, my desperate, angry explanation of who my daughter was, his demand for a birth certificate. It was all there, undeniable and damning. "I have it," I said, my voice trembling with a mix of vindication and adrenaline. "I have the whole thing on video." I airdropped the file to Robert's phone. He watched it, his face hardening into a mask of pure granite. He didn't say a word. He simply walked around the desk, took the chief's phone out of his hand, and placed it on the desk. "Mike," he said, and the use of the chief's first name was no longer a sign of familiarity, but of finality. "You have two options. You can resign, effective immediately. You will issue a public statement taking full responsibility for the systemic failures under your leadership that allowed an officer like your son to flourish. In exchange, I will not release the information about your relationship to him. I will let you retire with some small shred of dignity for the sake of your family." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "Or you can refuse, and I will hold a press conference on the steps of this building in 1 hour. I will play this video for every news camera in the city. I will release your son's 16 prior complaints, and then I will tell the entire world exactly who Officer Daniel Thompson is and who his father is that enabled him for years. The choice is yours." Reynolds stared at the floor, a broken man. The weight of his own complicity, the shame of his son's actions, and the end of his career all crashed down on him at once. He nodded slowly, tears welling in his eyes. "I'll resign," he whispered. Robert's phone rang. It was the commander on the scene at Miller's house. Robert put it on speaker. "We have him in custody, Mr. Mayor. He was unarmed, just tearing the place up. His wife is shaken but unharmed. We're taking him in now." Relief washed over me, so potent it almost made my knees buckle. Miller was in custody. Lily was safe. It was over. The next few hours were a blur. Chief Reynolds signed his resignation. Robert appointed an interim chief, a respected deputy I knew to be a good woman, and tasked her with a complete overhaul of the department, starting with a review of every single complaint filed against Miller in his precinct. The anonymous texter, it turned out, was another parent from the playground who was afraid of police retaliation but knew what they saw was wrong. They were assured their identity would be protected. When I finally got back to the mayor's residence, the sun was setting.
Lily ran into my arms the moment I walked through the door. "Daddy, Grandpa said you were helping the police officers because they made a big mistake." I hugged her tight, burying my face in her hair, inhaling the scent of sunshine and fruit snacks. "That's right, Lily Bug. They made a mistake, and we helped them fix it." Later that evening, after Lily was asleep, Robert and I sat on his back porch, looking out at the city lights. "It shouldn't have taken me being the mayor to fix this, David," he said quietly, swirling the ice in his glass. "It shouldn't have taken you being my son-in-law for you to be seen as a father." "I know," I said. "But today it did. And you used it. You used your power to protect your family, but you also used it to start fixing something that was broken for everyone." He looked at me, a glimmer of the grandfather returning to his eyes. "You're a good man, David, a great father. My daughter knew that, and I know that." We sat in a comfortable silence for a long time. The anger had faded, replaced by a profound exhaustion, but also a sliver of hope. It was a brutal, ugly day, a day that had exposed a deep rot in the foundations of our city. But it was also a day when the truth came out, a day when power was used not to cover up a lie, but to expose it, a day when a monster who hid behind a badge was finally held accountable. And for me, it was a day that ended the way all my favorite days do, knowing my daughter was sleeping safely down the hall, and that tomorrow we would get to go back to the park, just a dad and his little girl, under a bright, clear sky.